Every paw has a story, some filled with love, some with pain, but all of them deserve hope. Welcome to Tales of Hope, voices for the voiceless, hope for every paw. Here, we speak for those who can't, and together, we create hope, one paw at a time.
Gunila, it's good to have you on the show. Today, for the listeners, let me introduce you, Gunila Pedersen, who is a veterinarian surgeon by the day, and she's also a life coach. And not only that, she is also a podcaster who runs podcast on veterinarian burnouts. So if you are running or if you are having problems in terms of burnout, please don't hesitate to reach out to our guest, Gunila. Gunila, welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being able to talk about these things.
All right. I'm not going to waste much of a time in terms of introduction. I'm going to come straight to our first question. How do you approach conversations with clients when, their budget constraints limit treatment options for these small animals?
So first of all, for me, there's compassion, and then there's openness, there's honesty, and curiosity. So I try not to assume anything about the clients, either they have money or they don't have money, because, it's very easy to judge people. They come in, they look a certain way, and we think, oh, they're going to have money or not. I know nothing about these people. I know nothing about the personal situation. I don't know what they're going through. I can only say, in my opinion, it would be great for the animal if we could do this, this, and this. Would you like me to tell you how much that would cost? Because I don't know your situation. Those will be my literal words. I will say, I can make you an estimate. And some people will then interrupt me and say, it's okay, we have full insurance, or it's okay, we have saved up money, and then they're fine. If I can see that they are like, ooh, I don't know, then I give them very, very detailed estimates, so I don't put them in a situation where they end up in huge debt. And then we talk about options. So I don't believe in like gold standard or golden kind of whatever. Like, I believe that there's the care that we can give with what we get in that moment. And sometimes, for example, euthanasia is the best option. If you have a really complicated pelvic fracture, or you have some sort of cancer treatment, that's really expensive, and they cannot afford it, and it's just not feasible, then sometimes euthanasia is the best treatment in those cases.
Well, I'll tell you what, because I've had 3 of my own kids, and I know sometimes it's not only, I think, in Europe, but I think even in India, the veterinarian cost for taking care of these small animals is really, really expensive if you want the best of the care. I mean, I can share an example with you. When we have a second baby, the second girl that we have, you won't believe it, when she came to us, I think it was she was about just 3 months old. And to be honest, even though we had the insurance, but to do her treatment, it costed us like a bomb in a shell. Me and my wife, we were like, but because we cared for our baby, it was like, because she's a part of the family. So we didn't care about, how much it's going to cost us. And in India, I think the vets don't give you a budget, It's like either you tell them they tell you that this is the case, and you have no option. Either you do it or you don't.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I mean, well, okay, that's a difficult one, right? Because then you say you don't know what you're saying yes to, right? I think that's harsh. But I do feel like we have to be a bit, not careful, but just when we say it's expensive, yes, it's a lot of money. But when you look at what human healthcare costs, it's actually not. And we do amazing. For example, in a night, I will do, blood tests, put them on a drip, we can do imaging, and people will have the answers in hours for all those tests, and you have people on site at night, all the equipment is on, all the people are there, and people get a bit like, oh, it's a lot of money. And I'm like, you're paying for an amazing service. I wish I could go to the hospital with my kids and have their bloods and have them on a drip and have them treated and have them imaging and have them seen by a specialist within like 5 hours,
Wow. That is something, honestly. Coming back to my second question, what strategies do you think can help maintain animal welfare when ideal treatments aren't financially feasible,
Do you mean from the point of view of the owner, what the owners can do, or what the vets can do?
I normally don't call them owners. We call them pet parents, because it's
guardians. I like guardians because
Yes.
then there's no anthropomorphism. Then we're not Disneyfying them. I like guardians because then, but yeah, parents, if you like, we can call them that. But.
No, I don't mind calling them guardians because I think at the end of the day, we're just taking care of them. It's more than we taking care of them. I think they take care of us.
It goes both ways for sure.
Exactly.
Okay, so you mean for the guardian, if they don't have a lot of money, what is the best way to assure the welfare of the animal?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so number one thing is don't let your animal get fat, because as soon as they're obese, you're just signing up for lots of diseases, osteoarthritis and heart disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, that are all really expensive to treat. So if you can stop them from being obese, that would be the first option. And then I guess when you go to the vets, be very clear on what can you afford and what is your situation, so you don't, especially in India, if you don't have a budget, so you don't get kind of pushed into doing something that you're not maybe able to pay, right? And for me, I am Danish, and we tend to be very I guess not cold-hearted, but very practical, right? So for me, if an animal is suffering and there's only suffering left, to me, there's no point in prolonging it. I don't like, if they have, for example, an osteosarcoma, I personally would not go in and do a lot of therapy and amputate the leg and give them chemotherapy so they can live for 3 months, for example. So if you can get a really honest conversation with your vets about what is the realistic outcome of this, don't spend a ton of money on prolonging a suffering just because you want to hang on to the animal, because the animal has not got a bucket list. If you have dogs, and I personally, I'm not very much a cat woman, but I also love dogs, and I know the dog is in the now. If your dog is sitting behind you now, they're thinking, there's my dad, he's talking, this is Ace, I just had my breakfast, and he's not thinking about tomorrow, the next day. So I think some people can spend a lot of money in trying to prolong a thing that maybe doesn't need to be prolonged, and where the animal maybe gets to suffer more than it should, and a lot of money gets spent that maybe didn't need to be spent.
I think that's a very practical option, in terms, it's not being cold-hearted, what you said, but I think it's more of being practical, instead of just because as human, we want to hang on to them. And it's basically, as you said, prolonging their suffering. It's rather, sometimes we have to learn to let it go. That's what I think is very important. And yes, I know it's a bit hard, but because, for me, because I know the feeling, because we have 3 now. So even, when we're away for a couple of hours, but we make sure that at least one of us, we are at home, either me or my wife, to make sure that they're not alone. So I can understand what it relates to. Now, coming back to my other question would be, can you share experience where financial limitations led to creative or alternate treatments, plans sort of thing for the small animals?
Oh my God, I have a really fun case. I had a dog. So this was back in Spain, where just around the financial crisis, 2008, 2009. So I think every day was just like being MacGyver in the clinic, because nobody could afford a referral. I could not afford, really expensive instruments, because we were running on a tight budget. And we had a little dog that got brought in, and my colleague saw it in the morning, and it was a little fluffy white dog that had been badly bitten by a big dog. And so my colleague didn't want to do too much with him, because he just wanted him to stabilize him. And for some reason, he didn't place what we normally would place an intravenous catheter, so we got venal access, for anything. He just kind of gave him some pain relief and put him in a kennel and said, in this afternoon, can you see how he's doing? And me and my husband got in there at the afternoon, because it was really small clinic. I got my husband in to help me with stuff back then. And we came in, and this dog had blown up like a balloon. He was walking and he was going, wait, 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 wait. Because what had happened was that this big dog had taken the small dog and had shaken him violently and had broken some of the alveolus in the lungs. So that means that when he was breathing in, that air was going into the lungs and then into the chest cavity. And then because he had bite wounds, around the ribs, that air was going out underneath the skin. So every time he was breathing in, the air was going under the skin. So it was basically a balloon. So I had to call one of my Argentinian friends who used to be a cattle vet in Argentina, and he's like next level also with creative solutions. And we had to go to the chemist and buy preservatives, condom. And I had to use that as a one-way valve to put in his chest to help him escape this air so he could like slowly deblow, because there was no way they had money or any money was available to send this animal to a referral hospital in the capital where they would have proper drains. And then me and my husband slept with the dog that night in the clinic and just making sure he could still breathe until we could slowly empty the chest. But we had to go out to the chemist and buy a preservative to do that. That was after doing that, I realized if you're resourceful, you can do anything.
That is some creativity, I can tell you that. I'm sure the listeners, and especially if the vets in India, can also learn something from that. Now, how do you communicate the value of preventive care to clients concerned about the cost? Because I know most of the clients are always concerned about the cost.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, obviously, keeping the dog's weight down, that's preventative care, keeping it a healthy weight, giving it at least some sort of nutrition that's not just white bread left over from the day before, so it does have some nutrients to kind of go along in the body. And then you want to treat, I don't know if you have in India, but for example in Spain we do have heartworm, we do, you have ticks, you have mosquito-borne diseases like leishmaniasis, and blood tests for those and treatments for those diseases are incredibly expensive. They are very, very expensive, and often they'll go by the weight of the dog. So if you have a large dog, once it gets sick, I mean, my Labrador, which I adopted, had leishmaniasis, and it had tick fever, I think, as well, and something else. To treat that was a nightmare. It cost me a lot of money, and it was my clinic, so that was expensive. So if you can use, whatever vaccines you might have preventative, whatever pipettes, collars, you can use tablets to prevent the disease, even if it may seem a lot on a monthly and a yearly basis, you're saving so much money from your animal not becoming sick. Leishmaniasis, for example, you might have in India as well, that does attack the kidneys, and an animal on a kidney diet, on tablets to help the kidneys, and probably going on fluid therapy is much more expensive than any preventative care for leishmaniasis.
Well, in terms of tick fever, we've gone through that with our little baby. She had a tick fever. And the problem was, it took them at least 4 days to diagnose it that she has a tick fever. I mean, in the meantime, we did everything else. I think in a day, we were doing about 2 times her, she was getting x-rayed. She was doing everything. The doctors were trying everything. It was like a bit of not able to diagnose the right issue because she was not eating. And then in the end, it came out that she had a tick fever. But anyways, fortunately enough, she's 4 now and she's happy. I mean, we are happy with her.
Oh, good.
Now, coming back to the very important question, when you have a pet insurances and wellness play, what role can they play in bridging the affordability gap? I think it's not only in India, but I think even with Europe, or if you talk about North America.
I think if you think about it for yourself, it would be absolutely insane not to have insurance. Could you imagine if I might be not talking what I don't know, but in America, for example, if you break a leg and you don't have insurance, you would have to pay for that yourself. You're talking like how many thousands and thousands of dollars. In Europe, we do have national health insurance for people, so people are not really aware of how much it costs to go to the hospital and have the most simple tests. But imagine if you didn't have national health insurance in Europe, like what it would cost for each person. Nobody sane would just rely on no money to suddenly, if you break a leg or if you suddenly get really sick and need hospitalization. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to have pet insurance for your pets. And sometimes when the pets get really old and specific breeds, the pet insurance can be really expensive monthly. But if you don't want to do that, then at least put that money aside, have a separate bank account for your pet, because it's a bit like carrying an umbrella. If you carry it, then it might not rain. But if you're not insured, I mean, there are some cases that come in that I really believe that if you're not insured, it is going to be and euthanasia, because very few people are going to have £5,000 lying around for no reason, to spend And some cases will be that expensive.
No, that's a monster number, to be honest.
It can easily happen, and it's because, for example, in my clinic where I work in the UK now, and we have a CT machine. I'm not even aware of how much it costs and how many thousands that machine costs, but it's the cost of a machine that needs to cover the electricity, and then the knowledge of the specialists that can interpret the images. That alone is very expensive. So if you need any complicated fracture, or sometimes something is happening in the chest and we can't see it with the x-rays, then a CT might be appropriate. Then you already 1,000 has landed on your bill, because it's a very expensive machine. And we didn't have those when I finished studying. So I finished studying in 2004, I want to say. And back then we didn't have CT. So there was a lot of treatments that seemed cheaper, but you also have to take into account that medicine was not advanced in veterinary medicine as it is now. And we can do so many more things now that we couldn't do back then. So there's a lot of money to be spent if you really want to save your pet.
I mean, fortunately enough, I would be honest, even in India, we do have the pet insurance available, but I think a lot of people are still not aware. There's a lack of awareness in terms of, pet insurances, because from what I understand at this point in time, there's only one insurance company that is, running the pet insurances. Anyways, now, I would also ask, my next question would be, how can clinics implement this sliding scale payment models or other financial solutions to assist the clients?
I think this is very, very difficult. So personal experience, when I had my clinic in Spain, I ended up with a lot of debt, and so owners towards me. And I think it's very difficult, because when you're in the moment, you have a bleeding puppy that's been run over. You don't want to stand there and say to the client, look, I can't heal your puppy, I'm going to kill it. That's literally what you're talking about, right? If you don't have the money. So of course we try to save it, and the owners will promise in that moment, because there's a lot of emotions, they'll be like, I'll pay you. But sometimes the puppy dies. I have still spent all the money on treatments on this puppy, and it's dead. So now the owners are not so interested in paying for what has been done for it. Or we saved it and the owners are still not that interested in paying for it, because it's forgotten now, right? They're like, 2 months down the line, they're not interested in paying. And any clinic I've worked at in the UK since, one of them had 750,000 pounds in debt from people that hadn't paid their bills. The clinic I am now, I think that got it down a bit, but I don't know how close to 1 million that was. So I think there's no easy answer to this. I really don't think it's the clinic's job to cover for the money the owners don't have. You know what I mean? If we knew that owners would pay. So I personally am a terrible debtor in the sense that I cannot owe money. I freak out. Like yesterday, I bought some olive oil down by the fruit man here in Spain, and I was 40 euros. I had 35, and he said, "Oh, you can pay me tomorrow." I had to go down a bit later with the 5 euros because I cannot owe money. But there's a lot of people that don't have that problem, and that maybe think that vets earn a lot of money. And that's not true. And they think if I don't pay, that's not going to be a problem. And it is a problem because the clinics have to carry that debt. And that almost sank me in Spain. My clinic, I was really struggling and took very little pay home because of all the owners that didn't pay me.
No, but I think what you mentioned, I'm surprised that to hear that people, I don't think it's only a problem with Europe or America. I think even in India, we have the same kind of people, where they promise you in that heat of the moment, but then they don't want to pay. But it's not only with the vet cost. I think it's not only with the animals, even with humans, it's the same thing. I have had my experiences with that, but I think that is something they don't realize, that at the end of the day, I don't know whether I should say this or not, but karma is watching and it's going to come back to you. I mean,
yeah, maybe.
Karma is something that you will never escape no matter what.
Yeah.
What are the effective ways to discuss the cost of care without compromising trust or empathy?
That's a good question. I think, again, being open and honest and being really, really willing to listen. So the vet listens to the guardian and the guardian listens to the vet. So there's honesty and discussion. And I think in the very big, the ideal is, for example, you get a new dog and you come to me as a vet and I say, look, you have this breed. these are the things that can happen to this particular breed, and these are the things that can in general happen. You where you live, you could get heat stroke, you get run over, whatever. These are the costs you might be looking at if something happens. Maximum could be whatever. Is there any way that you can finance this? Can you set this money up aside, from a start? Can you have an account for this? Just you be prepared so the owners know upfront how much it costs.
I tell you, this is something which me and my wife, we've learned over the last 4 years, to be honest, because when we got our first baby, he's a Labrador retriever, and he is huge. And to be honest, we didn't plan or realize what we were getting into, because my wife's place, they always had, a Pomeranian or a small breed. But it's only when we got our first one, and I think it was not until the first 4 months that we realized the medical bills are going to go really. Every time we go down to our vet, that's a serious dent into our pockets. But sometimes you just can't say anything. It's like he's a part of the family. Now, today we have 2 labs. One is a male, the other one is a female. The male is already, we've already got him neutered up. The female, because she has a hip dysplasia, so we're still trying to figure out how to work that. And the third one, what we have is the Indie, which came in the Christmas, so the last Christmas. So that is what it is. And we realize it's so different when it comes to the medical cost now, whether it's an Indie or a lab. If we take her to the private vet that we take, it's the same amount of money that we have to spend, Anyways, coming back to my next question, how do you handle situations where client perceive cost discussions as prioritizing money over care?
It can be difficult, right? But I think because I'm so deep into coaching now, and I'm very self-aware. If I get defensive, I'm very self-aware. I can feel something coming up, and then as a vet, we all have a lot of empathy, and we can kind of sense people's emotions. So if I have a discussion with someone and money comes up as an issue, in my experience, the people I've had issues with are people where I have thought, I don't really want you as a client because I can sense that you're raising this, you're going to create a problem. So there's a few people where I've said, if you're not happy with the cost, I'm happy to refer you to another vet, because I think if people come in with that mentality, you're just out to get money off me, then they don't trust me already. So how is it going to go? How am I going to discuss treatments with you? If you bring your baby to me and you're already like, whoa, I don't trust you, you're just in it for the money, I don't really want to work with you, because I don't think nothing's good is going to come out of it. Because how can we agree on the treatments? Because I cannot just say, this is a treatment, this is what you have to do. I have to discuss with you and say, do you think this? Do you think that? I need to trust you. So if I'm asking you, what has your dog been eating, and has he gone out, and where does he drink his water from, and when was the last season, I have to trust that you're giving me the right information. And if you can't get that and you already come in thinking you're just in it for the money, then I don't think I can work with you, to be honest.
That's a very good point you brought up, to be honest, because the kind of relation me and my wife we share with our veterinarian is absolutely blind faith sort of thing. And the thing is, we can discuss openly. She doesn't hesitate to guide us that this is what needs to be done. And since she's also the godmother to my eldest son, so it's like we have, and I think it's a relationship where you rightly said, if you go with a preconceived notion that the vet is going to be fleecing money out of me, I think that's where you've your starting point is already you've lost it. So I think that was a very good thing, and that is what it reminded me with the kind of relation we share with our vet in Pune, Anyways, now let's come. The next section, what we're going to talk about is the mental health of the veterinarian practice, which is, I think, is a very, very important aspect, because you've been also dealing with it. What personal experience has shaped your advocacy for mental health in veterinarian field? Because I know sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so I burned out myself. I did crazy stuff though. I was owning a clinic, and then because I was such a bad business owner and I didn't manage to get enough money from the people that owned the pets because I felt sorry for everybody, I couldn't actually get my clinic to financially run. So I started to work as a, I don't know if you call it relief vet, we call it locuming in the UK. So I would go to clinics in the UK and work nights to earn some more money to bring home, and then I would have a young vet I trained up in my own clinic. So she's now taken over. She bought the clinic off me in the end. But so I was kind of going like remotely running my clinic. I would work a week in the UK doing nights, and then I would come back, run the clinic, do all the operations she had not been able to for a week, and then I would go back and so on. And at the same time, I was a mom. So I completely burned myself out, and it made me leave the veterinary medicine for a year because I just thought this is not for me. I can't do it anymore. I felt incredibly resentful towards pet guardians because I felt like they just wanted everything from me and weren't grateful. I felt very resentful because I just got so stressed out, and I didn't set any boundaries because I was trying to please everybody. I wanted to make everybody happy, and in my eyes, charging people made them unhappy. So that's why I wasn't good at charging them. So I dug that hole for myself completely. I cannot, like, now I love pet owners, and if they don't have money, we can get around it. We'll find a way. But back then, I definitely struggled and wanted to leave because I thought it was a very ungrateful career somehow, and I didn't feel I was getting anywhere. And it was very painful for me the times where we cannot save the animal, because when you come out of vet school, you have the textbooks, and if the animal comes in with these symptoms, you do these tests, you treat, and the animal walks out and everybody is happy. And they forget to tell you about all the times that it actually is completely fucked up and you can't do anything, and you have to, right? And so when it's not textbook, or you make a mistake because we're human and something happens and then you get blamed, that is very, very hard when you come out because you're not prepared for it. So there's a lot of things that affect you as a vet that takes a toll on our mental health. And I then got away for a year, kind of found myself, and then I found my way into coaching, not because I wanted to get back into vet med, but just because I found myself at a place where I wasn't being a good mom. I wasn't enjoying anything in my life. I was going to the hospital for what I thought were heart attacks, but they were actually just panic attacks. I say just, they're not fun. And then I kind of found coaching through different podcasts and this and the other. And once I realized how much it helped me, I decided to pass it on and help other vets. And it helped me out so much that now I actually work in emergencies, which is the most stressful bit of being a vet, but I can handle it because I have all the tools to now know that I don't need to please everybody. I can't save everybody, and doing my best is good enough.
I'll tell you what, since you said, you've been a coach, I also do that because I do more of spirituality in terms of bringing spirituality to business sort of thing. And what you said, I believe it's a phase of life. It takes you, or it unfolds you to make the better person out of you, as they say. I don't know how to say it, but, when you melt or you put the gold in heat, the fire it burns out with, it comes out as pure gold. And I think it is basically God's way of bringing you back, or unfolding mystery of life. So that is what I believe in, in terms of, I know, because I've also been burnt out once upon a time with my career, because I used to be in the entertainment business, and it used to be very ungrateful people, no matter what you do for them, for the artists, all these musicians, it's always, they're thankless, let's be very honest about it. So I think you just learn and you evolve. That is what it is. And I think for me, the grounding force has been always my spirituality that keeps me grounded no matter what. Anyways, coming back to another question would be, how do you recognize and address signs of burnout or compassion fatigue in yourself and colleagues? Since you've been...
Yeah, that's the problem. We don't recognize the signs. And that is one of the reasons that the veterinary profession has the highest suicide rate of any other profession. Ours is 4 times more likely to commit suicide or attempt suicide, because we do not recognize the signs. We just tumble along and we think we're maybe a bit tired. We will never say I'm not coping. We will never say I don't feel okay, because it's seen as a sign of weakness. And we are very, very, very driven, because obviously in order to get the grades to get into vet school, you have to be incredibly driven, very academic and very perfectionist. You can't admit failure, because then you don't get into vet school. And once you're in there, it's also very hard. You have to work hard and you have to be perfect at all times, because otherwise you fail, right? So for us to admit weakness or ask for help or look into ourselves or stop to breathe, which if you do spirituality and you're into that, then like breathing and feeling yourself is so important. We don't do that. If we feel uncomfortable, we just work more to cover over it. So first of all, that's what I want to say, that in general, vets specifically are very incredibly bad at recognizing the signs. But I would say what I've seen in myself and in my coaching clients as well is obviously dread going to work. You dread, you just don't want to go. Like Sunday afternoon, you already start dreading it. You don't want to go in. You fantasize. I fantasized about just coming into like a slight coma, nothing too dangerous, but so I could just lie down or falling on a desert island. So you're like, oh, fantasies like that, or starting a pancake house, something completely unrelated. I noticed as well, my family would call me out on, oh, you're on the phone again. Oh, you are, we just about to sit down for dinner and you're off again. Or, not being able to enjoy maybe hobbies you had before. So any creativity, like, painting, music, singing, anything you would normally enjoy, because you're burned out, your creativity gets shut down. Because it makes sense, if you're on fight and flight, your brain is thinking we're in survival mode. We're not going to stop and paint a Picasso, are we? We need to keep working. So you and your family will notice that you don't indulge in the hobbies and passions you had before. Bad sleep as well, not being able to sleep, having to check your messages constantly in case I've done something wrong, and somebody's calling me out on it. Obsessing over cases, just not being able to let them go, just keep thinking I should have done this, what could I have done different, and keep spinning in the same thoughts. I think and often the problem is that you don't show it on the outside, right? So the bubbliest, funniest ones are often the ones that are struggling most inside, me included. I can be, because we are so good at putting a face up for the guardians. No, I can handle this, I'm good at this, or for our colleagues. So somebody could be literally suicidal and you wouldn't know from the outside.
Be honest, that's very enlightening. I think that is something you being very candid about it, and I really love it. I think people who would listen to it would understand what it means. Anyways, coming back to my next question would be, what initiatives or resources have you found effective in supporting veterinarian professionals' mental well-being?
So I know from others that the phone lines you can call when you are in a bad place and you don't feel you can speak to anybody. I feel like the vet life and other, depending on not one more vet, depending on what country you're in, there are different lines you can call, and there are veterinary professionals on the other side. So I've never done that because I never actually recognized I wasn't burnout, so I didn't think there was any reason to call them. But so what helped me was listening to podcasts where I learned about managing my emotion, managing the mental health, reading books about it, talking to others about it as well, just getting it out in the open. Because I think often when we sit with this, oh, I'm such an idiot and I don't know how to do this, and there's a lot of shame. And as you know, if you're a spiritual coach, there's nothing to eliminate shame like shining a light on it. When it's allowed to hide in the dark corner, that's when it can grow. And expressing. So when I do, for example, my workshops, and I will tell something devastating from my own thing, and it could even be about my coaching business. Oh, I didn't have so many downloads on my podcast this month and it made me feel really inadequate on this and the other, so I say this is how it applies to everything. We take this imposter syndrome or whatever we're suffering with us everywhere, and I share that, and then people are like, oh yeah, I had this thing, oh yeah, it happened to me, oh I had so sharing it with others and realizing you're not the only one going through these emotions and thoughts is very, very important. And then there's me as a veterinary coach, and there's a lot of other veterinary coaches out there. We're quite a few that have kind of like you said, been been burned and melted into pure gold, and now we're passing it forward. So there's podcasts, like a lot of the Overwhelmed Vet, but there's also other podcasts because we all have different styles. Where I talk very fast, I'm very like candid, and others are maybe like a bit sweeter and speak a bit slower. So depending on what you're into, there are definitely resources out there to help you and realize and clock the signs and get help.
I tell you, I think these are signs that we all need to understand, Anyways, coming back to my next question, how does the hero complex in veterinarian medicine impact mental health, and how can it be mitigated?
It's the hero complex, I think, because you sent me an email with the questions in you. So the hero complex, can you just define that exactly, both for me and the listeners?
It's a lot of us, we think we are heroes, like what we were discussing. It's like we know deep inside we have our problems, but we want to put up a hero front side to us,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's exactly what I was describing before. We have to save everybody else, and it's exactly the opposite of what they say in an airplane. You get in an airplane, they say put the oxygen mask on you first. So vets tend to put the oxygen mask on like the whole cabin and suffocate themselves, right? And that's what we do. And I think because we're so used to having very emotional situations, so the guardians come storming in. Oh no, my beloved puppy, that I have been vaccinated maybe for a few months and I got to know the family, they come in, something terrible's happened, and I have to be the strong one to be like calming them down and taking care of the puppy. And if it dies, I have to be the strong one to support the family and grieve, and I can't show that my emotions. No, that's kind of what we think. And also with the team, so whoever is the vet in the veterinary clinic, if you have support staff, you are the one in charge and you have to support your support staff. And it's okay if you then have somewhere to load off on, but often we don't. I know one of my friends, I did an episode with her. She works in the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit in Liverpool. And of course, you call your dogs babies, but I think we can agree, like babies and then human babies, there might be a bit of a difference, but still, like the emotions we go through as well, just like her and her staff go through, they are very, very, very up there, no? Because pet, like you call them pet parents, no? Like the animal means so much. So we're standing in front of emotions that are just as strong as people that maybe have lost a newly baby, and they have 2 therapists on call, and for nurses, for human nurses and human meds. And whenever there is a loss, they have a call to just see what went wrong, and they say, what can we do better? And another call completely different, just for people to share their feelings and how are they doing? Do they need help? And we don't have that at all. We're just supposed to, like vets are just supposed to carry on and just as if nothing happened.
Wow, that is seriously tough.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what role does workplace culture play in promoting or hindering, your mental health amongst the vet staff?
Well, that's another can of worms, because a lot of the leaders in veterinary medicine, they are either very, very good vets, and hence they get promoted to leaders, but they have no leadership skills. They have not done any training in it. And you can be a natural leader. No, I've worked with vets that were just really good. Like my first mentor, the first clinic I worked at, she was amazing, always supportive and was there, and it was really good. I was really lucky. But a lot of vets don't. They can have all sorts of, mental issues and not be very open to staff and open to be there. And they're just kind of like, in their own track and not really leading the clinic. And then you have the other side of it, which is the corporates, and some of the leaders are not even vets. They could have worked in something completely different, I don't know, in Harrods in London, and now they are, running a veterinary clinic. So they don't have the background to understand their staff. And I think, especially in corporates now, the work culture is very we joke about it, like when you talk corporate talk, and there's a lot of memes now on the internet where they're like joking about it, and I find it can be a problem that you have like really big workplaces. There's no actual leader and everybody are just running their own show. There's no clear like who does what and who can you talk to if you have a problem, and a lot of gossip, for example, as well goes on, and a lot, and it doesn't get stopped because there's no real leader to kind of keep fingers in the on the ground.
Well, I can tell you that I have gone through all that in my earlier part of my career, and I know sometimes it's very hard to find the right leader, or probably a person who can take charge and mentor you correctly. So I think we've all had our fair share, I would say, because I've had my fair share of corporate crap that I took for almost, I would say, almost 15 years. And then I decided that's it. I am no longer going to take that crap. But, anyways, like we were discussing, can you discuss the importance of setting boundaries to maintain a healthy work life balance? Because you were talking, I remember during our conversation, you said you had no boundaries. It's just that the empathy towards these kids was, sometimes it overtakes us.
Yes, it can overtake us, and we could probably spend the rest of 2 hours talking about boundaries. But I see it, in general, I would talk about 3 types of boundaries. So there's boundaries for yourself. You need to say to yourself, I've done a good enough job. I can go home now. I don't need to write perfect notes. So I did a session with a specialist that she was so over focused on these perfect notes she had to write, so she would sit and write them to 2 o'clock in the morning, and for Saturday she still had 17 histories she had to write. So you need to set boundaries for yourself and say, what do I want out of my life, and how much free time do I want, and how much time do I want to spend with my dear ones? And then you need to set a limit for yourself and say, if I am supposed to leave at 10 past 6, I'm in my car. And you just have to set that boundary for yourself. Then you have to set boundaries for the people that bring in the pets. You have to be able to say no. So if they, for example, are asking you, oh, just give me the antibiotics I got last time, and you don't want to give them because you know it's a different issue, be good at saying no and be comfortable with them being angry at you because you believe that is the right thing to do. Or if somebody starts texting you on your private phone, sending you messages, they haven't spoken to you for 10 years, and have you got a moment because my dog has got this thing, can I send you a picture? Be good at saying no, so you wouldn't believe, it's incredible, right, what people do. I don't give my number out to anybody because I've switched numbers so many times because it's just very stressful, and I got really good at saying, oh, that looks serious, you should speak to your vet, and cut it, because you cannot be for everybody 24/7. It is humanly impossible. And then the third boundary we need to set is for our managers as well, right? So if we have come, sometimes we can come into this, yes, I'll just stay half an hour later. Yes, I'll give a hand and come in earlier. Oh, yes, I can do this weekend. And we don't realize it. And suddenly, again, we are working 24/7. And we need to be able to say no and be okay with them maybe being a bit miffed and, and telling us we're not pulling our weight, but we know we are.
I tell you, what you've just rightly said. I remember the first 2 years of my career when I started in the corporate culture. I think I was just talking about it to somebody recently. I was almost doing 100 hours a week,
Crazy.
And I tell you, it was crazy. Since I was young, I was only 21. I had just started my corporate life, as a sales executive. And you won't believe it. And since it was a different country, even from India, I had flown down to Taiwan, Taipei, and it was like, you wanted to prove to everybody that you can do it. And imagine I was putting in 100 hours a week, and there were days I had like 70 hours without sleep even.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And I remember there were people who would come back to India and tell my mother and my parents, your son is going to die very soon, But I think what you rightly said, we need to set our boundaries right from the start. Because if we don't do it right in the start, I think then we get it. People or our managers tend to abuse those things. Anyways, now coming back to our other question would be, how can open conversations about mental health be encouraged within the veterinarian teams,
So within the teams, I think it would be nice if the leaders themselves could talk about struggles they're having and then open up for discussions, and maybe not in such a, not like, oh, we have your annual review setting, let's sit down and talk about this now, because maybe you're not feeling in that moment, but take maybe difficult cases that have come up, and just have those little minutes to have a little cup of coffee or just like talk in the kitchen and just keep checking in on people. I think that's the leader's responsibility to do that, and open up about it. And any of us that are struggling, share it with others as well. Have the conversations about it, and it's not. It can be difficult, right? Because if you want to be vulnerable, it has to be in a safe place as well. So you cannot share with people you don't trust, of course, because then you're worried it might get turned against you, you know. But in the workplace, I think that it's a leader that has to step up and provide like a fertile ground for the conversations.
That's so truly said. You know, if you have a right leader, I think things would be different. But I think the leaders need to be trained as well.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Coming back to our last segment, you know, I would ask you, your career has spanned various areas, including mixed practice, small animals. How has these experiences influenced your perspective on, you know, veterinarian medicine?
So, well, mixed practice was very little. I just did 3 months of vaccinating goats in the Spanish mountain. But I have owned my own clinics. I think it's more the fact that I have been a practice owner, so running the business and seeing like how much does everything cost and how difficult is it to run, and then also work emergencies and it being a GP. So I think it just given me a very big perspective, a very clear perspective of what it takes. And then I'm obviously a pet owner myself. I've had pets all my life, so I've seen all aspects of it, which makes it really, really easy for me to see each person's point of view, and it makes it easy not to judge so quickly as well, I think.
Now, you as a working mother, how do you manage the challenges of balancing professional responsibilities with family life? You know, we've been talking about it.
Yeah, no, I didn't manage it at all. No, it was hard. I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I think no matter what you do, you're always going to feel guilty. So you're either going to feel guilty because you stay at home with your sick child, and now you know your colleagues have to work harder because you're not there. And if you're at work and you have a slightly sick child at home, or you drop them off at kindercare and you hope they don't have fever, then you feel guilty towards the child. So for me, when I coach my clients on this, it's be super clear on your priorities. I like to use when you lie on your deathbed and you look back, what are you going to be happy you did and what are you going to be happy you didn't do, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's what your priorities are, but you need to be really clear about them. And the problem is when we are really, really busy and we are stressed and burned out, we just tend to be putting out fires constantly. So whoever is calling me at that moment are the ones that get my attention. And it's important to sit down in a quiet moment with ourselves and realize, what are my priorities? What do I want to do? I'll give you an example, which is not specifically related to vet med, but for example, my husband and I, we really, really want to go walking. We love doing hikes. And we realized like weekend after weekend was happening where we just end up, you know, doing a bit of work on the house, maybe go shopping. And I said, no, we need to set an intention and literally put it in the calendar that every Sunday we're going for a hike. Because that way, if somebody else tried to book us for something, it's like, no, this is taken for the hike. That's what I mean when I say be really intentional about your priorities and be really aware of them.
That's a very nice way, you know, of putting it up. That you need to just put your foot down and say, this is what I want to do over the weekends. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Now, coming back to the end of the show, I'm going to ask you, what advice would you offer to veterinary professionals seeking to achieve a sustainable and fulfilling career path?
So take a moment with yourself. Know what it is to be aware of what you're thinking and what you're feeling, so you don't get dragged along and suddenly you're putting out fire and just feel like you're being pulled along and you're just like this ship in a fast flowing river and you don't even know where you're going and you feel you can't leave. So for me is meditation, and it can literally be 2 minutes where you just sit and breathe in and out through your nose and notice that, and just notice what thoughts come up. A big one for me was journaling. I don't do it as much now because I'm really good at catching my thoughts now, but it's probably taken me 3 years of daily journaling, first in books and then it was quick on the computer, so wherever I kind of am. For example, we traveled to Thailand in January and I could feel myself starting to freak a bit out and have some issues. So I literally went to 7-Eleven that they have in Thailand. They have everything, and I got a little notebook just to sit and write my thoughts down because I could feel my brain starting to spin and I couldn't catch it. So then I need to write them down and like what's going on, no? So being super aware of what you're thinking, and because your brain will just throw 60 to 80,000 thoughts at you a day, and you will just go with them without knowing what's going on. So really practice that. So meditation, journaling, and also sitting down and, like I said before, like knowing what your priorities are. What do you want out of life? When you when you sit on your deathbed and look back, like, what is it you want to have achieved, and what is it you're gonna be missing out on? Are you gonna say, oh, I'm so unhappy that I didn't work 70 hours a week, or you're gonna say, oh, I'm so unhappy I didn't get to travel and I didn't get to be with my kids? Like, what are your priorities in life, and be really clear on them. And the other thing I think is being really good at boundary setting. So being good at saying no, go through that discomfort, as uncomfortable it is as an empathetic person, and especially if you're a people pleaser like me, saying no feels like putting my hand on the fire. It's really, really hard, but practicing boundaries is life-saving. And also realize that you're not perfect. It's never gonna be perfect, and you can do everything right and shit can still get fucked up. Sorry if I'm swearing, but it's
No, absolutely, you're okay with that.
Yeah, and be open about it. Don't sit and alone and ashamed, feeling, oh, this is all because of me and it's my fault. Yeah, you're probably gonna mess up and you're probably gonna make mistakes, and everybody do, and it doesn't mean that you are any less worthy.
Gunila, I tell you, this has been a very inspiring conversation. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much.